Hello. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day to everyone joining us today. My name is Trish Novalah binti Muhammad Khairi.
And I am Bidadayah binti Yusuf. So we are students from Maths 2 PPIS MP program.
Okay, so for today, for our MTS 1132 Appreciation of Mathematics assignment, we would like to take you on a journey not just through numbers and equations, but through one of the most beautiful and philosophically profound discoveries in the history of mathematics.
Okay, so we want to ask you a question to begin. Imagine you and two of your friends are trying to decide on a restaurant for dinner. You each have different preferences. Friend A wants pizza, friend B wants sushi, and friend C wants burgers. You decide to vote, but here is the strange thing. No matter which voting method you use, someone ends up unhappy and you cannot quite explain why the result is unfair.
Yeah, so that frustration, that feeling that the system is broken, is not just a social problem. It is a mathematical problem. And in 1951, a young economist named Kenneth J. Arrow proved with complete mathematical rigor that this frustration is not a flaw that better design can fix. It is a mathematical impossibility.
Here is what we will cover today. So, we begin with the foundations, the five fairness axioms that Arrow defined. Then, we'll explore the mathematical beauty of the proof itself. After that, we discuss real-world implications for democracy and electoral systems. We then look at how computational thinking offers us an ethical framework for navigating these limitations. And we close with our conclusion and advocacy as future mathematics educators.
Yeah. So we will be presenting throughout and we share the conclusion together at the end of the video.
Before we dive into mathematics, let us meet the man behind the theorem, which is Kenneth Joseph Arrow. He was born in New York City in 1921. He was an economist and mathematician who, at just 29 years old, published a book called Social Choice and Individual Values. In that book, he posed a fundamental question. It is mathematically possible to design a perfect voting system? So, we will cover today.
Yeah. So what this Kenneth Joseph Arrow found, he found the answer that will earn him the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1972, which made him the youngest person ever to receive it at the time. But more importantly, his answer fundamentally changed how we understand democracy, fairness, and collective decision making. Arrow did not just raise doubts, he proved mathematically that a perfect fair voting system is impossible when there are three or more choices. This is not a flaw in our creativity, it is a flaw embedded in the logic of group preference itself. So, to understand why Arrow's theorem is so powerful, we need to first understand what he was trying to prove. Arrow did not simply say voting is messy. He precisely defined what a fair voting system should look like using five clear logical conditions he called axioms. These are conditions that any reasonable person would agree a fair system must satisfy.
So, I would like to start with the first axiom. So, the first axiom that Arrow showed is non-dictatorship. This simply means that the outcome of a group vote should not be determined entirely by one single person, regardless of what everyone else wants. If one person's preferences always determine the group's result, that is not democracy. That is a dictatorship dressed in the language of voting.
Okay, so next, the second axiom is the Pareto efficiency. This means that if every single voter in the group prefers candidate A over candidate B, then the group results must also show that A is preferred over B. This seems obvious, doesn't it? If everyone agrees, the system should agree too. A system that contradicts an animus preference would be bizarre and clearly unfair.
Okay, and the third axiom is unrestricted domain. A fair voting system must be able to handle any possible combination of voter preferences, no matter how diverse or unusual they are. You cannot design a system that only works when voters agree in predictable patterns. In the real world, people have all kinds of preferences, and the system must cope with all of them.
Yeah. So now we come to the fourth axiom, which is the most critical one and the one that most voting systems in the real world violate. It is called the independence of irrelevant alternatives, or IIA. This says that the relative ranking between two candidates should not change based on whether a third or separate candidate enters or leaves the election. Think about it, think about it this way. If voters prefer Anna over Ben, that preference should not change just because a third candidate, which is Chloe, decides to run. So close presence should be irrelevant to the comparison between Anna and Ben. If a candidate presents can change the ranking of two other candidates, this is a serious fairness violation.
Oh, okay, I understand that. And lastly, we come to the last axiom, which is the fifth axiom. Is the fifth axiom. So the fifth axiom is social ordering. This requires that a group's preferences form a consistent transitive ranking, just like individual preferences do. If the group prefers A over B and B over C, then the group should also prefer A over C. This seems mathematically obvious, but as we will see, group preferences can create circular results that violate this very requirement.
Yeah. So there we go. We have the five areas: non-dictatorship, parental efficiency, and restricted domain, independence of irrelevant alternatives, and social ordering. Each one individually seems completely reasonable, logical even. So no fair-minded person would object to any of them. And this is exactly what makes Arrow's theorem so profound and so disturbing. He did not prove that one of these axioms is unreasonable. He proved that all five of them, taken together, are logically incompatible when you have three or more options to choose from.
Let me illustrate why. So imagine if there are three voters choosing between three options. If voter 1 prefers A over B over C, voter 2 prefers B over C over A, and voter 3 prefers C over A over B, then when you compare them pairwise, a majority prefers A over B, a majority prefers B over C, but a majority also prefers C over A. This group's preferences cycle. There is no clear winner here, and this is called the Condorcet paradox, and it is at the heart of why Arrow's theorem works.
Yeah, I understood, Vila. So Arrow showed that whenever voter preferences create these cycles, which they often do, any system that tries to break the cycle will inevitably violate one of the five fairness axioms. You cannot escape it. So the mathematics force you to compromise. So now we'll see the mathematical proof and a concrete work example for these five axioms.
Alright, Nuri, so we will cover the next topic, which is the mathematical beauty, the proof, and the paradox. So now, I want to show you not just what the theorem says, but why it is mathematically beautiful. Because there is genuine elegance here, not in the outcome, but in the structure of the proof itself.
Okay, so Ayer's method was to represent any voting system as a social welfare function, a mathematical function that takes as input a complete list of every voter's rank preference and outputs a single group ranking. By framing it this way, he could apply the tools of formal logic to analyze what such a function can and cannot do.
Then, as you can see, Arrow took his five fairness conditions and applied them as constraints on this function. The question became, is there any social welfare function that satisfies all five constraints simultaneously for three or more options? The answer is No. And he demonstrated this through careful logic derivation. If you try to satisfy all 5 axioms at once, you always eventually reach a contradiction. The structure of group preferences simply cannot be forced into a form that respects all 5 rules.
I understood, Mila. So now, the engine of the impossibility is the Condorcet paradox, which you have introduced earlier.
Yes.
So, let us look at in detail using the pizza example from the first example earlier. So, the three friends choose between pepperoni, mushroom, and anchovies. Friend 1 prefers pepperoni, then mushroom, then anchovies. Next, friend 2 prefers mushroom, then anchovies, then pepperoni. And the last friend, friend 3, prefers anchovies, then pepperoni, then mushroom. So if we compare them in pairs, 2 out of 3 prefer pepperoni over mushroom, and 2 out of 3 prefer mushroom over anchovies. So logically, we expect pepperoni to win. But wait, 2 out of 3 actually prefer anchovies over pepperoni. So this group's collective preference is circular. There is no winner, no matter which topping you choose, a majority of the group will have preferred something else.
And if you know Norris, to break this cycle and declare a winner, the voting system must make a choice. And in making that choice, it will violate at least one of the error's axioms. Most commonly, it violates the independence of irrelevant alternatives or IIA, meaning a third irrelevant option ends up determining the winner between the other two. This is precisely the spoiler effect we see in real elections.
So now, let us use a concrete mathematical example from Mila's paper, a student council election with 3 candidates, Anna, Ben, and Chloe. 9 voters divided equally into 3 groups. Group 1 ranks Anna first, Ben second, and Chloe third. The group 2 ranks Ben first, Chloe second, and Anna in the third one. And then the group 3 ranks Chloe first, Anna second, and then Ben third.
Okay. Then we want to calculate how the voters should. Then we will calculate how the voters works. So to calculate them, we apply the Borda count system, which with the 3 candidates, first place receives 2 points, second place receives 1 point, and the last place receives 0 points. So for Anna score, the 3 voters give her 2 points, 3 give her 0 points, and 3 give her 1 point, which makes them total is 9 points. Then Ben's score is 3 voters give him 1 point, 3 give him 2 points, and 3 give him 0 points. So the total for Ben's score is 9 points. And lastly, Chloe's score, which 3 voters who is vote for Chloe give her 0 points, 3 give her 1 point, and 3 give her 2 points. So the total for Chloe's score is 9 points. If you see it this way, Anna, Ben's, and Chloe's scores are the same, which is 9 points. A perfect three-way tie. No winner. But we have run a democratic election and gotten no democratic result.
Okay, so but the real damage comes in scenario 2. Okay, so we imagine a fourth candidate named David enters the race. Importantly, no voter likes David. David will be ranked last by everyone. So Arrow's IIA axiom tells us this should not matter because David is irrelevant to the comparison between Anna, Ben, and Chloe. So their relative rankings have not changed. But let's say David now takes up a slot in the Borda count. The point value shift when group 3 slightly change where they place David, not how they feel about Anna, Ben, or Chloe, but just where David sits, the total scores for the main candidates change. An entirely different candidate might actually win.
So this is the IIA violation in action. An irrelevant candidate, someone who no one wants, has changed the outcome of the election between the real candidates. This is not a hypothetical. This is mathematics. Arrow proved it must happen in any ranked voting system when preferences create cycles.
Yeah. So what I actually find mathematically beautiful about this is the clarity of the argument. So Aaron did not just survey the elections. He did not run experiments. He sat down with logic and proved that this must be true for any ranked voting system, for all time, for any society, for any numbers of voters. So the proof is actually universal. That universality is where the beauty lives.
Oh, I understand, Reese. So, actually, Arrow's work has been validated repeatedly since 1951. Amartya Sen, who himself later won the Nobel Prize, showed that even weakening the fairness conditions still leads to the same core conclusion. Eric Maskin, another Nobel laureate, further confirmed that the limitations Arrow identified cannot be bypassed in any rank system. The theorem is not controversial, it is mathematically certain. So now I guess we'll have to move to the next part, right?
Yeah.
Where we discuss this means for real democracies around the world.
Yeah. Now, as we know, mathematics does not just live only in textbooks. Arrow's theorem reaches into every ballot box on the planet. Let us look at how.
Okay, I'll cover this part. In a standard plurality voting system where you vote for one candidate and the one with the most votes win, Arrow's theorem manifests as what political scientists call the spoiler effect. A minor, third-party candidate can split the vote among people who share similar preferences, causing the candidate they all least prefer to win. This is a direct violation of IIA. The presence of the third candidate, the irrelevant alternative, has changed the relative ranking between the two main candidates. We see this pattern repeatedly in elections around the world.
Yeah, I agree. So, many countries have tried to fix the spoiler effect by switching to ranked choice voting or RCV. So, in RCV, voters list their preferences in order. If no candidate gets a majority, the last place candidate is eliminated and their votes are redistributed based on the next preference on each ballot. This continues until someone has a majority and wins. So, this one sounds fairer, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so, but error theorem still applies. So, RCV often violates the monotonicity condition where a less strict versions of the axiom. So, in some configurations, you can rank your preferred candidate higher and actually cause them to lose. This is called the monotonicity paradox and it has been documented in real RCV elections. No rank system actually escape Arrow's logic.
Oh, I understand. So now, here is an important one. Arrow's theorem only applies to ordinal voting system, where it is the system where you rank options in order. It does not apply to cardinal voting system, which is it is a system where you assign a score or rating to each option independently. So in cardinal voting system like score voting, you might rate Anna as 8 out of 10, Ben as 5 out of 10, and Chloe as 9 out of 10, regardless of how many candidates are running. Because your ratings are absolute rather than relative, adding or removing a candidate does not automatically shift your scores for others. This sidesteps Arrow's IIA requirements. Both papers acknowledge this. And in your paper, I see that it discusses score voting and majority judgment as examples that pass Arrow's fairness criteria. And my paper notes that Amartya Sen showed that cardinal systems can potentially satisfy all four conditions simultaneously.
Yeah, but however, this is critical. The cardinal system have their own challenges. They require voters to make meaningful, consistent numerical comparisons. If different voters use the scale differently, one person, 7 out of 10, might mean something completely different from another person. So the system loses its fairness properties too. They are not a perfect solution, they are a different type of trade-off. Yeah.
Here is where Arrow's theorem becomes most urgent for our generation. We live in a world dominated by algorithms that aggregate preferences. Netflix recommends movies based on what thousands of users prefer. Social media algorithms decide which posts you see by combining millions of individual engagement signals into a ranked feed. Search engines decide which results appears first. And all of these are, in a mathematical sense, social welfare functions. They take individual preferences as input and produce a group ranking as output. And because they are a ranking system, they face arrow-like constraints. They must all inevitably violate some fairness condition.
Yeah. So the difference is that when a democratic election violates IIA, there are laws, oversight bodies, and public scrutiny. When a social media algorithms violates IIA, when the irrelevant trending topic changes which voices you hear, there is often no transparency and no accountability. And understanding Arrow's theorem is not just academic, it is civic literacy for the digital age.
And for your information, Iris, Arrow's most important practical lesson is this, where every electoral system is not just a method of counting votes, it is a deliberate choice about which fairness principle you are willing to sacrifice. Plurality voting sacrifices IAA, accepting the spoiler effect in exchange for simplicity. Ranked choice voting sacrifices monotonicity in exchange for fewer spoiler effects. Border count sacrifices IIA in exchange for considering the full spectrum of preferences. When we understand this, we can inform public debates about electoral reform. Instead of arguing that our system is best, we can ask which fairness trade-off does our society want to make. That is a much more honest and productive conversation.
I understood, Mila. So now, we will go to how computational thinking provides us with tools to navigate these trade-offs and why integrating this kind of thinking into public education is an ethical imperative.
Yes. So, we have established that Arrow's theorem is mathematically certain, historically validated, and present in every election and algorithm we encounter. And the question now is, what do we do with this knowledge? The answer is, we argue, lies in computational thinking, not just as a technical skill, but as an ethical framework for public understanding.
Yeah, so computational thinking is a problem-solving methodology developed in a computer science education. It rests on four pillars. The first is decomposition, which is breaking a complex problem into smaller, more manageable parts. The second is pattern recognition, where we identifying recurring structures within the problems. The third would be abstraction, where we focus on the most relevant aspects of a problem and ignore the distracting details. And the last one would be algorithm design, where we develop step-by-step solutions and testing them systematically.
So, from those four concepts of computational thinking, we apply the Arrow's theorem on them. So, in decomposition, we decompose the concept of fairness in voting into its five constituent axioms, making the problem tractable. For pattern recognition, Arrow identified that whenever preferences cycle the Condorcet pattern, no rank system can resolve it fairly. That pattern recognition is the engine of the proof. And next, for abstraction concept, Arrow abstracted the messy reality of human preference into a clean mathematical object, which is the social welfare function. This allowed him to prove something universal, not just something true for one specific election. And lastly, for the last concept of computational thinking, which is algorithm design, Once we have the mathematical framework, we can design computational algorithms that simulate different voting systems, test them against all five axioms, and identify which axiom each system violates under which conditions.
Okay, so as we know, this is not theoretical. So today, researchers and electoral reform advocates use computer simulations to test different voting methods. They feed in millions of synthetic voter preference profiles and measure statistically how often each system violates each fairness condition. They compare the spoiler effect rate in plurality voting against the monotonicity failure rate in ranked choice voting. They test cardinal systems against errors condition. But this simulation allow societies to make empirically informed decisions about which voting system to adopt, not based on intuition, tradition, or political interest, but based on data and mathematical analysis.
But Nourish, computational thinking is not only a tool for experts, it is a framework that ethical citizenship. Here is why. When you understand that every ranking system, including the algorithms that curate your news feed, must violate some fairness principle, you begin to ask better questions. You may ask, which principle has been violated? Who benefits from this violation? Who designed the system? And what trade-off did they consciously or unconsciously choose? Without this understanding, citizens are mathematically illiterate in the face of systems that shape their access to information, their political outcomes, and their social realities. With it, they can hold these systems accountable.
I agree, Bila. So there is an ethical imperative here. We know that social media algorithms, which are at their core social welfare functions, can amplify certain voices and suppress others through their fairness trade-off. We know that recommendation algorithms can create filter bubbles. We know that election system can produce outcomes that majorities did not want. And yet, mathematical illiteracy allows these systems to operate without meaningful public scrutiny. Yeah.
Alright, so we might come to another part, which is our role as future educators after we see all of this Arrow's theorem. So, as students in mathematics program, right?
Yeah.
We as future teachers, we have a specific responsibility here. We will shape how the next generation understand mathematics, and we argue that mathematical appreciation means more than solving equations. It means understanding how mathematical structures shape social reality. Arrow's theorem is the perfect vehicle for this. It is accessible enough to explain without advanced calculus. It is profound enough to generate genuine wonder, and it is relevant enough to connect to every student's life experience of fairness, voting, and digital life.
Yeah, so the teaching error theorem in secondary or tertiary mathematics classroom will help students understand that mathematics is not neutral. It makes it makes value choices embedded in seemingly objective system. That voting is not just counting; it is navigating a landscape of logical trade-offs, and that the tools of mathematical reasoning are tools for democratic accountability.
Oh, I understand this. So, we must also be honest about limitations here. As you can see, Arrow's theorem is mathematically certain, but that does not mean every application. But that does not mean every application of it is straightforward. The IIA axiom, which elegant, may be too strict for some democratic contexts. Some political philosophers argue that voters' ranking of two candidates can reasonably depend on which other candidates are running, making IIA less obviously fair than what Arrow assumed it is. This is a genuine intellectual debate. Computational models of voting system are powerful, but they are only as valid as the preference profiles we feed them. If our simulations do not reflect the true diversity of human preference patterns, the results may mislead rather than inform. And finally, public mathematical literacy remains extremely low in most societies, even if we know that cardinal systems offer better fairness properties, right? But convincing voters to adopt them requires the kind of civic mathematics education that does not yet exist at scale.
Yeah, so these are not reasons to abandon the project. They are reasons to take it seriously. The integration of mathematical appreciation and computational thinking into public education is not a completed task. It is an ongoing ethical project, one that we as future educators are now part of. So now we go to our conclusions.
That's right. And as future educators, we advocate loudly for this. We believe that Arrow's theorem should be part of mathematics education at the secondary level, not as an advanced topic, but as a central example of how mathematics illuminates reality. It is accessible, fascinating, and it is urgently relevant. We advocate for the integration of computational thinking into mathematics curricula, not just as coding skills, but as a framework for ethical reasoning about the systems that govern our lives. And we advocate for appreciation of mathematics, not just as a set of techniques to master, but as a profound human endeavor that reveals truths about what is possible, what is impossible, and what choices we must make as societies. Arrow's legacy is not the destruction of democracy, but a deeper, more honest understanding of its mathematical limitations. That honesty, we believe, is the beginning of wisdom. We hope this presentation has given you not just information about Arrow's theorem, but a genuine sense of its power and beauty. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye!